Greetings ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mangs, and today I welcome you guys to yet another Fire Emblem character Spotlights. On this day we've actually hit a milestone. Up until now we've covered 49 different characters in the Fire Emblem universe, and today I proudly announce Spotlight number 50. It is finally time we have a look at the one and only Sword Demon / Saint, Karel.
Point me toward a worthy opponent.
Karel is a man hailing from the plains of Sacaen in eastern Alib. He is the brother of Carla and the uncle of Fear, as well as the brother-in-law to Bartra. Karel grew up in a family of swordmasters and was from an early age trained every day in the way of the sword. As he grew older, his mastery of the blade as well as his lust for battle only increased, and he became more and more obsessed with swordplay. His younger sister Carla also began training, but she did it only to get closer to her brother, as it was the only way for her to spend time with him. While Karel grew colder and colder year by year, he did share some brief moments of sentimentality together with his little sister, before he completely lost himself in his sword. At one point, Karel became so obsessed with swordplay that he killed his entire family to obtain the legendary Wudao katana. Apparently this secret blade was a family treasure, but not the only one of its kind, as we see multiple Wudaos in the game at once. This might mean that the Wudao is a special kind of katana either crafted by someone in Karel's family, or maybe from a master swordsmith with connections to them. The only member of Karel's family to survive his demonic onslaught was Carla, who Karel spared in hopes that she would grow stronger one day so that he could return to challenge her. After murdering his family, Karel set out on a journey to find strong combatants to test his skills against, and one by one he defeated any challenger he came across. After a while, he started to accumulate a lot of victories and thus started to generate a lot of legends, as he killed some of the strongest figures to be found in Alib. This included a wizard of Ilia who could freeze the blood in a person's veins, and a stone giant from the Western Isles 3 times the size of a normal man. Although, according to Karel himself, the rumors themselves started getting out of hand and began embellishing the truths, hinting that these things may not have happened at all, or maybe in a different fashion. Karel was, however, known to take on entire armies of soldiers and mercenaries single-handedly. As his list of victories and accomplishments grew, his demonic bloodlust would earn him the title Sword Demon, as he would supposedly be seen laughing on the battlefield as he collected the blades of his fallen enemies. At some point during his journey, Karel would travel to Bern, where he sought out the headquarters of the Black Fang. He had heard that there would be new recruits gathered there, and he hoped there would be strong fighters among them that he could challenge. Instead of running into the Black Fang, however, Karel came across Lyn. After watching her swordplay, he was mesmerized. Something about Lyn probably reminded him of his sister, seeing as they were both dark-haired Sacaen women. He quickly approached Lyn, told her that her swordplay was beautiful, and then decided that he would join her. Joining Lyn and her companions was a smart decision, as it left Karel no shortage of enemies to test his skills against, but it also led to an unexpected events. As they were traveling through Ostia, Bartra, who was part of the group, challenged a female gladiator in the Ostian arena, and barely survived the encounter. This female gladiator was Carla, who had been traveling the world, much like her brother, seeking out worthy opponents to battle. Karel initially tried his best to avoid her, as he didn't think her strong enough, but was still afraid that he would not be able to resist the urge to strike her down should she come too close. Carla eventually ran into her brother, however, and was overjoyed to see him again, but Karel was only cold and distant, telling her to duel him, proclaiming that only one of them would survive and that only one of them would be able to wield the Wudao. However, something happened that Karel did not expect. When he finally deemed Carla ready for their final battle and approached her, she merely threw her sword down, told Karel how much he had meant to her growing up, and proclaimed that she was merely happy to have seen her brother again one last time. This interaction caused Karel to have a sudden change of heart. Suddenly, he did not wish to cut her down after all, and left Carla alone. After the events of Blazing Sword, Karel vanished. He would later run into Bartra and Carla, who had married after the war. But when Carla introduced her new husband to her brother, Karel merely left without saying a word. Eventually, much later on, Karel discarded his title of Sword Demon and transformed into the revered Sword Saints. While we do not know what caused this sudden change, we can only speculate that it was Carla who was the agent for his transformation. It could be that watching his sister getting married to Bartra and having their daughter, Fear, gave Karel another outlook on life, and that may have inspired him to start using his sword to protect rather than to kill. 20 years later, Karel would be found living a peaceful life in a small mountain village in the outskirts of Bern. This village happened to reside close to the Dragon Temple, where the last dragons, Jan and Idun, resided. After King Sephiel of Bern was defeated by General Roy, the last remaining dragon general, Brynja, came with the remaining Bern army to guard the Dragon Temple. Shortly after, General Roy and the Lycian army came as well, guided by the legendary weapons. Fighting in Roy's army were Bartra and Fear, who had been reunited on the Western Isles. As Roy's army was passing through the village on their way up to the Dragon Temple, they encountered Karel and convinced him to come up with them. Upon seeing Bartra again, Karel was saddened to hear that Carla had passed away from an illness, but he was happy to see that her daughter Fear was doing well and that she had grown into a strong young sword fighter just like her mother. Karel would accompany Roy's army into the Dragon Temple and help them cut down the last dragons. After the battle, he returned home to the mountain village, where he lived out the rest of his days in peace. Apparently, many young aspiring swordsmen would come to the village after the war, seeking his counsel and training, but he turned every single one of them down. In Blazing Sword, Karel is a tall man somewhere in his 20s or maybe even 30s. It's kinda hard to tell. He has long black hair that goes down to his upper thighs. He has brown eyes which emit a demonic glare of pure bloodlusts. He wears a long blue robe with seemingly no shirt underneath. He also wears white pants and brown boots. In his hand, he holds the infamous Wu Dao, a katana that he killed his entire family to obtain. In Binding Blade, 20 years later, Karel now has short hair, though he seems to wear an almost identical attire. His Wu Dao is now resting in its scabbard, and Karel himself looks much more peaceful and serene, yet there is a hidden strength to him that shines through, revealing his long years of experience and dark pasts. Karel fits almost every single criterion of that of a deranged psychopath, living only to fight and kill, having no remorse or pity. However, this was not the state he was born into, as Carlo remarks that he was kind as a boy, until he started losing himself in his swordplay. In many ways, this bears resemblance to how shamans in the Alib universe gradually loses themselves in their dark magic, slowly losing all sense of self and becoming merely vessels for their dark energies. While it is impossible to truly understand what drove Karel onto a similar path, at least he was not completely lost, as even when he had almost embodied the sword demon inside him, his younger sister's tears were enough to bring him back from the brink of madness and back into the lights. Karel is a bit of a mystery figure. We see him at his darkest as the Sword Demon, and then later after he has transformed into the Sword Saint, but we never get to see what prompts this change. We can only really speculate that it had something to do with meeting Carla. While Karel enjoys bloodlust, he seems to have no interest in weaklings. He doesn't kill for the sake of just killing, he only slays those who can provide him with the challenge, as that is what makes him feel truly alive. He completely rejects Lucius due to his frail nature, stating that he has absolutely no use for him, but later discovered that being in Lucius' presence makes him feel calm, a feeling he had not felt since being a child. His rapport with Lucius is a very special one, as it brings out what little remains of Karel's humanity, as he briefly allows himself a moment of rest in the young monk's presence. In his older days, Karel has taken on a role of that of a mentor and is a lot more kind and humane, though he still bears some shades of his old self. In his support conversation with Fear, he quickly shuts her down when she starts to admire him, telling her that it is pointless to marvel over another person's power, and that it is not the kind of strength he seeks. In this support conversation, we briefly see a flash of the old sword demon showing his face for a brief instant, as he almost indicates that he is still seeking out strong swordmasters, and that he is not interested in some girl merely following him around and admiring him, but that he instead wants Fear to develop and grow strong on her own, just like he wanted Carla to develop and grow strong on her own. One of the perhaps the biggest changes in Karel is a complete turnabout regarding his philosophy around the sword. As the young sword demon, Karel treats his own blade as a living entity, claiming it thirsts for blood and that it seeks to grow stronger through battle. As the older sword saint, however, Karel admits that there is no strength in a mere piece of metal and that the sword itself is just a tool used to kill. It doesn't get any stronger or weaker on its own, and that real strength comes from within oneself. In his support conversation with Rutger, he clearly sees some of his own past in the young Sacaen boy, stating that Rutger's hatred blinds his his own sword, preventing him from listening to the sky and the earth. Rutger then says that Karel's sword seems to blend in with the wind itself, and that his sword is powerful, but without holding any hatred. Karel explains that no matter what path one takes with the sword, they all eventually end up at the same place. What he means by this is a bit of a mystery. It could potentially mean death. Karel is one of the few characters that are playable both in Binding Blade and Blazing Sword. Let's take a look at his younger self in Blazing Sword first, where he joins as a pre-promoted swordmaster in Chapter 25 of Eliwood's story or Chapter 27 of Hector's story. However, depending on the player's actions in said chapter, Karel may not show up at all. For Karel to show his face, you must on Germ's map open 4 or more doors before the end of turn 9, or on Kenneth's map you must kill 2 or more promoted enemies before turn 9. If you fail to do either of these things, you will instead get Harken, a pre-promoted hero. Harken is by many considered to be the stronger choice of the two, since heroes are generally a more versatile class compared to the swordmasters, with access to the ever-useful hand axe. Not to mention Harken has overall higher stats and even gets hard mode bonuses, something Karel does not. He also comes with a brave sword, which is considered a better weapon than the Wu Dao. Still, if you happen to prefer swordmasters, Karel is by no means a terrible unit. As a level 8 pre-promoted swordmaster with impressive base stats, Karel is easily capable of one-rounding most enemies he goes up against. With a base speed of 20, he will pretty much double every single enemy in the game at base, save some of the endgame bosses. Equipped with his Wu Dao, his crit rate will easily surpass 50% or more, giving you a very good chance of scoring a critical hit, especially against the zero-luck morphs in the endgame. Karel also sports a rather decent con of 9, enabling him to use steel swords or even blades without losing his doubling capabilities. Though for the most part, the Wu Dao or the Killing Edge will be his primary weapons of choice. Karel's growth rates are also surprisingly solid for a pre-promoted unit. His strength may not be fantastic at 30%, but he will easily cap his skill and speed with a 50% growth rate in both. While his defense and resistance won't go very far on their own, his high avoidance ensures that he will dodge most incoming attacks, so he doesn't really rely on those stats to keep himself alive. However, be careful not to send him up against lance-wielding enemies unless he is carrying a Lance Reaver, as his 31 hit points and 13 defense will make him go down rather fast. Sadly, Karel faces a lot of competition in Blazing Sword, since 2 of your mandatory lords, Lyn and Eliwood, are both sword-locked prior to their promotion. Not to mention there are a lot of very viable sword-wielding units. Also being locked to swords means Karel will most likely not do well on enemy face unless you give him a light brand or wound sword, both of which are very rare and expensive. However, he will be able to kill almost any single unit you send him up against, even bosses. His high crit rate will usually be good enough so that you can rely on at least one of his attacks dealing triple damage. In Binding Blade, Karel is the last playable character to join your party, and he pretty much fills the role of the Gado archetype, a near max level unit with high bases joining you at the end of the game to ensure you have some chance against the final bosses. You'll need to visit the village near your starting location with either Fear or Bartra to recruit him though, so he's not a unit that's guaranteed to join. Karel also comically has the highest growth rates in the history of Fire Emblem, but since he only has a single level to grow, you won't really get to enjoy them that much. But if you do give him enough experience for that last level, he has a chance of getting +2 points in multiple stats if you are lucky, though to be fair, this will do little to affect his actual combat performance. At base, armed with a Durandal or a Wormslayer, Karel is more than capable of one-rounding any Manicates, even on hard mode. While Fear or Rutger will probably have higher stats if you train them, Karel is still a nice addition to your team if you need another dragon-killing units. Normally, a lack of 2-range weapons kinda hurts swordmasters, but considering every single enemy you'll face the chapter after Karel joins is a 1-range Manicate, you won't really feel this handicap with Karel at all. At the end of the day, Karel has difficulties earning a spot in both of the games he is in. In Blazing Sword, he faces a lot of competition from other sword-wielding units, not to mention you have to forego a very good hero in order to recruit him. In Binding Blade, it is difficult to justify fielding him as you have very few deployment slots available in the final chapter, and you most likely have other units capable of wielding the Durandal. In ranked runs and speedruns, he can potentially serve as a decent unit, but for the most part he will usually be benched in favor of someone better, maybe serving as a filler if an extra deployment slot is available, or as a replacement if another sword-wielding unit died. Still, he is a pre-promoted unit that requires very little investment to get going. Despite how you choose to use him, either as Sword Demon or Sword Saint, he's sure to carve your enemies up into 1,000 pieces.
I am on the path of the sword. I seek its end. one way or another.
Thank you for watching this Fire Emblem character spotlight. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and a comment, it really helps out the channel a lot. I would like to thank my silver tier Patreon, Dr. Cornflakes, who requested this spotlight of Karel alongside this drawing as his silver tier reward. By supporting me on Patreon, you too can request your very own spotlight and a drawing. I would also like to thank my other Patreon supporters as well. Anyone of bronze tier or higher will automatically be listed at the end of my spotlights and certain other videos. I am very grateful for your continued support, thank you so much. The beautiful art and design you see created in this video was made by my designer Mina Tangerina, and my script editors Nasiro and Sonagi helped me fine-tune the script for this spotlight. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Mangs, and I'll see you again soon. Goodbye!